Our first panel this morning that we're going to start is on agents. We were talking about maybe we should just skip this one because nobody's interested in agents. That's almost everybody. That's the most common question that we get asked all the time about agents. So we're going to try to set this up so that we actually have a little time at the end of it to get some questions from you guys if you have them. But Eric, you want to take it away?
There are, it seems to me, four sort of basic points I want to make, and then I'll pass it over to Kevin. The first is a slogan that I'm sure most of you probably heard, but I want to start with it because it remains critical, and that's the expression, money only flows one way. It flows to the writer. This is a very important rule for you to internalize because there are a lot of scam artists out there. There are scam publishers, there are scam agents, there are scams everywhere, and fortunately, the surest sign you're dealing with somebody trying to scam you is that they ask for money. Don't give it to them and go somewhere else. Writers should never be giving money to anybody. This is a protocol that is established and understood and accepted by legitimate and honest publishers and agents. In fact, it's very rigid. The protocol is that if an author and an agent get together for lunch, the agent buys. If the agent and the publisher get together for lunch, the publisher buys. If an author and a publisher get together for lunch, obviously the publisher buys. An author never pays for anything, not even lunch.
Isn't this a great field to be in?
It can get to the point of being a little silly. As the years went by, I actually became pretty good friends with my publisher, Jim Bain. But till the day he died, there's no way he would let me buy him a drink. You know, it just didn't matter. He was always going to buy. He just said, "You'll never see the day when I let you buy me anything."
Said, the wrong agent can be worse than no agent at all. And for most of you who are at the beginning of your career, and if you're so frantic to go out and get an agent, it's like that, what was the Groucho Marx quote, that he wouldn't want to be a member of a club that would have him. If you don't have any credits, you can't really get an agent who's worth having anyway. There are agents that advertise in the back of writing magazines, and I'm going to tell you this is what I did very early in my career, and I'm very glad I did it so early in my career because it was such a royal screw-up. I did it when I was like I think a junior or senior in high school, so that nobody knew, so, you know, way back before there was flush toilets and electricity and stuff. But there was an advertisement in the back of Writer's Digest of somebody saying, "Send me your work and I'll consider it." Now, in the first place, a really good agent is not desperately looking for new clients. They've got so many clients they can't handle many of them. But I was a young aspiring writer, and I had my first novel manuscript. It was a fantasy quest with a magic sword and monsters, and I even had a map with a dotted line and insert adventure here and all the places on it. And so I wrote this manuscript, and I wrote some short stories, and I saw an advertisement for this agent, and I wrote her because I needed to get an agent. I wanted to be a writer, and you have to get an agent, I was sure. And she charged me $25 to read my manuscript. So it was the money flowing in the wrong direction, but that wasn't such a big deal. So I paid the $25, sent her in the manuscript, and I got a letter back with, this is a fantasy with a magic sword and dragons and stuff. And she wrote, "Well, I don't really like this kind of thing, but Star Wars was a hit, so I can probably sell it." And I thought, oh, good, she knows the market. And I sent her I was writing short stories all the time, so instead of mailing the short stories out to magazines, I sent her my short stories. I was writing a short story like every week, so I kept sending her story and story and story. And about 7-8 months later, I got a letter saying, "Congratulations, I've sold 2 of your short stories to the Lippincott magazines. A guy named Stuart Lippincott was publishing these magazines that I had never heard of, but everybody knows Lippincott in the publishing world. The name was Lippincott. It's a name to conjure with, so must be a good magazine. And they were paying me something like $350 for these 2 stories, which is actually a pretty good pay rate. And I was walking on air. I was still in high school. Everybody knew I wanted to be a writer, so I was just floating through the halls. I've sold a story, I've sold a story. And then the next letter came from the agent.
Through partially fortune, partially a little bit of smartness on my part, but mostly fortune, with one of the top agents in the entire business. Joshua Bilmes, Jabberwocky Literary Agency, had 3 #1 New York Times books on the #1 New York Times bestseller list last year. For science fiction and fantasy, I'm willing to bet he's the only agent in the business who had 3 #1s. So that's a pretty big deal. But beyond that, Joshua's a really, really obsessive, compulsive, anal retentive man. And I say that with a great deal of love and endearment. And I'm going to go down the list and tell you what Joshua does and what Joshua won't do. All right? And this can kind of be a list of do's and don'ts for an agent. Understand that Joshua is a very hands-on agent. If you do not want a hands-on agent, you don't want Joshua. Probably. You want to go with someone more like who Kevin or Dave have. And they can both tell you about their agents. I think Dave's with Russ Galen. And Kevin, you were with...
Trident Media Group, which actually that's another thing to talk about, is big agents or boutique agencies and stuff.
So they belong to enormous agencies, enormous big, that have a number of agents working under the agent rubric. I belong to an agency where there is one guy, his assistant, and 2 assistants. Actually, 1 assistant and an intern right now. And it's really been Joshua for a long time. So what will Joshua do? Well, let me describe first so you understand Joshua's personality. One of my earliest experiences with Joshua was when I got my very first contract. Now, I sold a book without him. Understand that. Eric pointed out you do not need an agent to break into this business. I'm increasingly confident that you don't. In fact, all those agencies